strategy. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
Scrambling a little bit. I have a couple of things I want to check in with you about this webinar.
Okay.
One is I changed the order of the script a little bit because I wanted to show that fire burning as we're doing the intro for Frank. So you'll see in the script it doesn't say go to the go away from the slides until after the Frank intro. So I just wanted to give you a heads up so you didn't go, oh wait, aren't we supposed to click out of the slides? Does that make sense?
So you're gonna play the video in the background as people come in, is that right?
Yeah. I didn't figure out how to put it on a loop, so we'll have to, and I guess my question to you is who runs the slide deck? There's only 3 slides, so it's not a big deal. But we might have to click that go button a couple times.
To restart it.
To restart the little video, yeah. Hi, Frank.
Hey there.
Hey,
How are
Frank. You made it.
So far, so good.
Yeah, this is great.
How's the sound quality? Okay.
Yes.
I put the dogs in the car so that they won't be interrupting the session.
Oh, I have one that's sleeping for the moment. I'll be on the ready with the mute button.
I've got one getting babysat.
Okay. Okay. You guys are
We're on it. Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
What kind of dogs do you have, Frank?
Too many.
That's never enough. Never
We
enough.
have all 3 are kind of rescues. We have a border collie, a mutt, and a multi-poo.
Oh, a multi-poo.
Multi-poo. Is that a little one? That's gotta be
Little,
little,
yeah,
right?
little guy. But he punches above his weight.
What does that mean?
He's got a lot of dog in that little body. That's all.
Rini, are you getting a new dog?
Am I getting a new dog?
Yeah.
Well, I dream of it, but I don't think it's practical until I get Marty to move out to our bigger property.
There you go. Yeah.
What indications have I given?
Margaret?
Oh yes. Yeah, she's got those golden doodles,
Right.
puppies.
I
Yeah.
thought maybe that was gonna lure you into
Yeah, tempting. Also, I have been thinking about a littler one. Remember my dream? Kristen and I were in Indianapolis for 3 weeks doing a building wild note. And I had this dream while we were there that we were going to find a little tiny dog and we were going to adopt him and his name was going to be Pocket. So I have been thinking about Pocket lately, Kristen, that I want to actually find that dog somewhere and adopt him.
I was raised with big dogs, but I'm becoming a small dog believer, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to contend with. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I have a 60-pound Weimaraner and she's like 500 pounds of energy.
Oh boy.
Even at 7.
Should I try sharing my screen to make sure these slides are going to show up okay?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Hang on one
And
second.
Kristen, who on our end is going to do the slide deck? You want that
You
to
can go ahead and do it if you want.
Okay. You see the share down at the bottom? Oh, yeah.
Okay, then if I
Ooh,
just go,
cool.
right, okay. Okay,
What is behind? Is that a fox and a armadillo?
it's a coyote and a badger.
Oh,
There's a story there.
I love it. Okay.
Well, you said you wanted me to start with a story. I don't have any funny stories, so I thought I would just introduce a certain theme with these. These are recent images from Sedgwick.
That's lovely. That's great.
Okay, so that works. That's good to know. I'll stop sharing.
I have a question for you. The photographer, I want to make sure I give him credit. Was it Ethan Turpin?
Ethan Turpin.
Okay.
Yeah, he is. He does these immersive experiences with prescribed burns. You can walk into his exhibits and get surrounded by his videography of prescribed burning, things like that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm going to see if I can run the video while we're testing stuff. So let me share my screen. Is
You
that
getting
too
it?
loud?
I'm not hearing it. Let me just see.
Oh.
Maybe I need to, yeah, I'm not getting this.
Well, actually, I think there's a couple different ways to share. Let's see if I get the option.
Yeah, the sound is kind of helpful in those videos.
Yeah. I thought there was a way to share the screen and use sound, but I'm not seeing that broadcast. Bulls Q&A chat. Oh, here we go. Share sound.
Yeah, that's got it.
Okay, cool. And then when it finishes, I'll just restart it, I think. See if that works.
The sound is a little dim here, a little faint. I don't know whether you can turn up the volume a little bit.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
turned it
really matter
down.
but
Yeah, I just didn't want it to be too distracting. Is that better?
yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Not crackle pop.
And then maybe when we're doing the introduction, I'll turn it down a little. Yeah, it's amazing footage. I wanted to put it in a loop, but I didn't get around to that, so we'll just do it the manual way.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's great. That'll get everybody in the mood.
Yeah. Okay. Boop. Any other last minute thoughts, Kristen?
Frank, was it Liza who got you onto WildNote, or was it somebody else?
It was Liza.
She's still a big fan. I talked to her.
I'm gonna launch the poll so I don't forget. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I think we ended up with 80 registrations.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I did.
Double what we had last time we talked, so that's good.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what this, because I don't know anything about this audience. It's a pretty superficial treatment, but hopefully they'll get something out of it.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah.
And then at the end, Kristen, I have a really simple demo. So I just thought I'd let you know that. It's just like I'm going to show 3 different versions of our photo export and then show how to do the photo point. Oh, look, there's Nancy.
Wait, Nance, I started the poll.
Okay, wait, I shouldn't be on here.
Yeah.
Too late.
Hi. Hi, Frank. Nice to see you.
Too late now. You're in the webinar.
Oh. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, good.
I think when I ran through these slides, it took me about 16, 17 minutes. So hopefully that's okay.
That's great.
That's perfect, Frank. Yeah. Perfect. How often are you out at Sedgwick?
I try to get out there 3 days a week, but I haven't been making it out that frequently lately. So I
You
try
live
to
in-
spend nights a week out there.
You live in Santa Barbara then most of the time?
We do, yeah. We live up near Moore Mesa, if you know the area.
I don't. By the school or?
Halfway between downtown Santa Barbara and the university. So
Uh-huh.
it's kinda nice. I can ride my bike whichever way I'm going. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah. When we got an office downtown, it was like I don't know, many years ago, it feels like, I got an e-bike and that has changed I ride it everywhere now. It's great.
I know I feel like a slow old codger on bike trail these days because
I bet.
flying by.
Totally. Yep. We just dust you Luddites there.
Exactly.
But you're
Yeah.
getting more exercise.
I can't decide whether I get irritated or jealous when they go by.
Yeah.
I know, like even my hardcore mountain bike friends are all going electric, and they say they get a better workout. I'm like, how could that be? And they're like, because we go more often, we go longer.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see that definitely. For me, it definitely meant I ride my bike more often. That's
Yeah, I think that's the
100%.
key right there.
Yeah. Is just getting out on it. And then because I'm not like all sweaty when I get where I'm going, which is perfect. So
Yeah.
like I'll get my haircut today and ride my bike downtown for that.
Wait, you put a helmet on top of your haircut?
I know. Safety first. That's my motto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got this, they're gonna build this beautiful bike boulevard, which I'll be able to take advantage of. That'll be completely protected from cars, and it'll have a nice walking area as well. Which is very exciting for the.
How is that being paid for? That's interesting. From local taxes, or?
It must be, it's a local function.
Wow.
And it's, we made climate action. I'm guessing they roped it into our climate action work in the city.
There's
somehow.
also a really strong bike coalition contingent.
That's so true.
Yeah,
Very
I was
strong.
tight with them for a while, and they've been lobbying for years to open more and more little corridors and then to piece them together.
Yeah,
cool.
I bet that's it actually.
Yeah.
They're great. They do a lot of trail maintenance. They really support the community with their work. Yeah.
Look what I dug up my old white Wild Note shirt.
Oh, good.
From the archives.
I need to get another Wild Note t-shirt. I wore out the one that I had.
Oh, good.
Oh, what's your size?
Large, I think.
Okay. I'm not
Maybe
going to
we'll have
ask
to order-
color preference because we're pretty low and
Yeah, we might even have to order some more pretty soon, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think the one I had was sort of like a tan color with the kind of emoji like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had like
Yeah.
3 or 4 icons
Yeah.
across the top.
Yeah.
Did it have a ringer collar or no?
It did, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the
It was
ringer
a great
collar.
t-shirt.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 10:59. Should we make this a go?
Let's see
Sure.
here.
11 o'clock.
Yeah, I'll start the webinar. There we go. Okay, I started. Then I click on participants and you can see people joining.
Yeah. And you have to click on
Welcome, welcome. Nice to see some familiar and not familiar faces joining.
Oh, Kristen Zumdahl, you probably know her, Frank. And you're on mute, Frank. I don't know if that's
I know, I deliberately muted myself. For
okay.
But yes, I'm seeing some friends along the list there. That's great.
That's great. Yeah, good. This is great. Welcome everyone as we let people join. Oh, shoot, the video. Rini?
Okay, I'll share my slide deck and you tell folks about the poll.
Okay, yep. Looks like we've got a few people who have answered the poll. I think it pops right up when you join. Yeah, we were really interested in if our audience does a lot of land management regarding fire suppression. So we didn't know how many people would sign up for this and how many are actively doing work in this area. So do you want to explain this video, either Frank or Rini, as people are coming in?
Frank, you shared this video with me. Why don't you give it a quick explanation?
Yeah, this is a training burn or Trex burn that we conducted last November, and you're seeing a fire going through a blue oak overstory with an understory of coastal sage scrub like purple sage and annual grasses. This is towards the latter stage of the burn. You can see a lot of burned area in the background, but this is a very successful little burn where I'll show some images from this burn later in the session this morning.
Great.
This is folks that are actually these are trainees who are actually learning how to conduct prescribed fires. There were 42 trainees at this event.
Oh, wow.
And your photographer for this was Ethan
Ethan
Turpin,
Turpin is the photographer and videographer who shared this clip with us. Yeah, Ethan does a lot of really great fire photography and videography in our region.
that box in the middle, isn't that related to the?
Yeah,
maybe
he's got a video camera sitting in that metal box, and so he has some kind of really immersive videos that just show the fire right up against the tree there and so forth as well.
Okay, well, I'll get us started, Rini, while you keep playing that video. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. It is our 29th Lunch and Learn, and I'm so excited to have our guest here today. I think he might have the best job in the world because he gets to go out and spend time at Sedgwick Nature Reserve and study land management in these amazing oaks that are out there. Quick question, Frank, how old is the oldest oak out there?
Good question. Don't know, because
Okay.
they get hard to age when they get really old, but it's certainly many centuries.
Oh my gosh,
I
yeah.
would suspect somewhere over 400 years anyway.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's amazing. So we are lucky enough to have Frank here, a conservation scientist and head of Biogeography Lab at the Bren School at UCSB. We hope that you ask questions and receive value and walk away with real solutions to real problems. That's the point of these. My name is Kristen Hazard. I am the founder and CEO of WildNote, and WildNote is the environmental consulting technology platform. It allows you to handle more projects without adding more people, resulting in higher quality deliverables and more profitable projects. My co-host today is Rini Punzi. Yay. She's our co-founder and currently heading up sales at WildNote. And if you haven't completed the poll yet, please take a moment to fill it out. All right. So Frank Davis is director of the Lacretz Research Center at Sedgwick Reserve, executive director of long-term ecological research network office, and is a distinguished professor of environmental science and management. He holds a BA in biology from Williams College and a PhD in geography and environmental engineering from the Johns Hopkins University. He has been a professor at UC Santa Barbara since 1983. Wonderful. Professor Davis uses remote sensing and GIS to analyze the distribution and management of wild species and ecosystems. His research focuses on the landscape ecology of California plant communities, climate change effects on plant species distributions, the design of protected area networks, and forest and rangeland management. Welcome, Frank.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
You can stop sharing. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'd like to start just to get to know you a little better with a quick story from the field. Frank, you got one of those for us?
Not really, but this could be considered one. And it's sort of one of the themes of the little presentation today is about the power of collaboration, which is really essential for the kind of work we're doing. So this is a wildlife camera shot taken recently out at Sedgwick, and one of the areas is planned for burning, where we're collecting pre-burn imagery on wildlife. You can see on the right a badger, and on the left a coyote. And that's kind of interesting. Maybe just a coincidence. We caught them both in the same camera. Angela Giordani was responsible for this. But you can see another image later in another nearby area by a water trough where the badger is now following the coyote. And this appears to be an example of what's called cooperative hunting between species. Actually do a collaborative search for prey and capturing prey. So the theme again is collaboration and the power of collaboration, particularly diverse collaborations. But on to a little discussion about fire, and I'll start with this image. We don't need much reminding of how flammable the planet is after this week's events in Hawaii. So, but you can see from this analysis by Max Moritz and others, just over this 10-year period, most of the planet is experiencing fire. Only the driest, coldest, and wettest places aren't. And a lot of these places are dominated by trees, whether it's the boreal forest or whether it's subtropical savannas. And fire takes a lot of different properties in different places. It can be crown fires that are very destructive that kill most of the trees, like this fire in boreal black spruce forest in Alaska on the upper left. It can be ground fires that are lower severity, which most trees will survive, like this cerrado or savanna vegetation in southern Brazil on the lower left. It can be deliberately set fires for a variety of different management purposes, like this ponderosa pine prescribed burn in New Mexico in the upper right. And it can be catastrophic wildfires, like this example of a eucalypt being consumed in Australia. All of these have different outcomes and implications. But if you're going to be the largest and oldest organisms on the planet, you have to figure out how to adapt to recurring fires in the ecosystems where you exist. And there's some really interesting adaptations that trees have come up with. I'll just mention a few in the next 2 slides. Some of the traits are traits that enhance the ability of the trees to actually survive the fires when they occur. On the right, you'll see one pretty widespread trait that trees have, which is the ability to resprout, either from the base, from the root crown, in the case of this black oak in the upper right image, or in the case of the lower left image, resprouting from stems and branches, what's called epicormic resprouting. In this case, a coast live oak that was completely incinerated in this chaparral fire, but 5 years later, you can see it recovering from that extreme burn with rebuilding its canopy. Another important trait is bark, and thick bark definitely shields the inner living tissues of the tree. It's really important to shield the cambium in particular, that actively dividing layer of cells in the tree below the bark, and the living phloem. Once cambium reaches a temperature of around 145 degrees Fahrenheit, that will kill the cells. You kill the cambium, you kill the tree. And so the thicker the bark, the less likely you reach those lethal temperatures when the tree's experiencing fire. And tree bark thickness can be quite impressive. Of course, the grand champion is probably these giant sequoias, like you see here in the upper left, where the bark thickness on a large old sequoia can get to be up over 1/2 meter in thickness.
Wow.
But you can also see a big fire scar on this tree, which is at some point in the distance past, the fire got severe enough to actually kill the cambium and kill that part of the tree, that part of the stem. And then that dead part of the tree, the inner dead tissues, keep getting rescorched as fires recur in that system. So those are traits that help trees survive the fire. There are other traits that help trees recover by recolonizing burned areas. And so there's a number of things: seed dispersal, long distance seed dispersal, the ability of the seeds to land and grow on open areas and recently burned soils. One of the more dramatic traits, highly specialized, is what's called serotiny or pyrесcence. And this is where the trees actually accumulate their fruit or cones on the canopy. They don't shed the seeds every year. They actually store them like a seed bank in the canopy. And then those seeds are released by the heat of the fire. A number of different species do that. This is bishop pine in California. And if you see a bishop pine, after it's burned, the place is completely consumed, stand replacing crown fires, but then there'll be seedlings all over the place that come up as an even age cohort, as you see here on the lower right. That's 13 years after a burn in Santa Barbara County. As you think about fires recurring across the area, across the landscape in space and time, the fire regimes will produce very different looking structures, forest and woodland structures. This is a nice example from the Lassen National Forest, Alan Taylor's work. So the image from 1925 shows a ponderosa pine, a white fir system with frequent ground fires. Often these systems have probably experienced low severity ground fires that cleared out the understory and tended to promote the existence of mainly large scattered trees. Fire suppression, turn off those ground fires, and all of a sudden all those saplings that you can see in the foreground start to become larger trees, and the next thing you know, you've got an understory that's thick with white fir and others. So by 2008, you've got a very well-stocked stand with emergent old trees. The Redding fire in 2012 in that part of California actually ended up being a pretty destructive crown fire as a result of all that fuel accumulation. So again, fire regime equals different forest structures equals different kinds of fire regimes that are tightly coupled. We know that wildfire is increasing in California. This is just a trend from 1975 to 2018 for the whole state. But what's interesting here, a lot of these fires are occurring in montane systems, the montane conifer forest and chaparral systems, a lot of it on federal lands. But there's increasing fire also down at lower elevations in the foothills in areas that are more characterized by oak woodlands and coastal state scrublands and annual grasslands. And so that's interesting in part because those are largely privately owned lands, and they're also more settled by rural residential and wildland urban interface kinds of communities. So the bar graph on the lower part of this figure shows an analysis by John Keeley that shows for oak woodlands in California, the difference between the proportion that burned in 1951 to 1984 compared to 1985 to 2020. And you can see a big uptick in the burning in oak woodlands as well in some regions, particularly Northern California, less so in the Sierra Nevada. All this burning has led to a resurgence in interest in prescribed fire as a way to try to manage fire safety and fire severity. And that brings us to Sedgwick, where we're trying to understand how the kind of regrowth or redevelopment of prescribed burning in these landscapes has what the consequences are for public safety, what they mean for biodiversity, what they mean for stewardship, what they mean in terms of public awareness and understanding of fires in these landscapes. So Sedgwick Reserve is a 6,000 acre reserve. It's part of the UC Natural Reserve System. It's about an hour northwest of Santa Barbara. You can see in this upper right photo the kind of landscape of Sedgwick. This is an experimental grassland burn. You can see the people in the foreground and the vehicles on the side there for scale. And as you look across this landscape, you see our coastal sage scrublands, annual grasslands, oak savannas, and oak woodlands. That's kind of the system we work in. And then the lower photos show the same burn that we had a video of earlier. This is that same November 2022 burn in coastal scrub and in oak woodlands. Now, you'd think that we know a lot about burning in these systems, but the fact is there's a real knowledge gap. A lot more has been done in the conifer systems and in the hardwood and the coastal sage scrub systems in terms of rigorous research. So we have some real information needs as we try to do managed burning in these systems. For example, what's the relationship between pre-burn vegetation, structure, composition, and fire behavior? And how does that affect the outcomes of those fires? How does fire affect soils, hydrology, and biogeochemistry in these landscapes? What are the effects if you change the fire return interval, the time between fires, or the season in which you're burning? A lot of people are interested in grazing as another management tool to reduce fire severity in these systems. What's the interaction between grazing and prescribed burning behavior? How do you design and manage fuel breaks in these landscapes? And another interesting one is, as we reintroduce prescribed fire, how does the public perception and understanding of fire evolve and change in these systems? We're trying to tackle a lot of these questions at Sedgwick. I'll just show you a couple of examples just to kind of whet your appetite. In terms of studying oaks, we're really interested in the question of how fire behavior affects oak survival and growth and vigor. And to do that, we do some old-fashioned kind of forestry work, like the lower left slide, ground plots where we measure the trees and characterize the understory fuel and composition. And then we also use LiDAR and high-resolution drone imagery, like you can see on the lower right for one of the areas that we burned last year. But we're measuring fire behavior using a couple different technologies. The pyrometers are literally nothing more than paints that melt at different melting points, temperatures. And so you paint an array of those on strips, and you can lay those strips out across the fire, and then you can measure how hot the fire got in different places. You can get a lot of these deployed inexpensively. A more sophisticated and expensive technology is to use thermocouples. So here you can see some white wires that are actually going up the tree or down along the soil. They're buried, they're attached to a buried data logger, and then those thermocouples record literally kind of every few seconds the temperatures as the fire burns through that system, and we can understand how the fire is distributed against the trunk, things like that. Example of a prescribed burn in progress, that's the one we saw earlier, another Ethan Turpin photo. And then after the burn, and we've measured the fire behavior, we've measured pre-burn, we go out and do post-fire work. This is Kylie Brand and Kristen Zumdahl here looking at the burn just a couple days afterwards, doing tree initial kind of damage, scorch height, crown burn, litter consumption, things like that. And then on the right, you'll see, just to point out that we're also monitoring the recovery of these shrublands and grasslands. Together in the lower right from this drone image, that's the pre-burn drone in the lower right, and that's the post-burn from November to April of this year. You can get a sense of the trees recovered very well. In general, we had very little oak mortality. We have a lot of heterogeneity, a lot of spatial variation in the recovery of the plant communities in the grassland and coastal scrub areas related to fire behavior. What we're trying to do is ultimately get some generalization, some general rules of thumb for managing fire in these systems. So one question is, how does the risk to an oak change as that oak gets bigger? and older. And so to do that, you need to know what's the relationship between the size of the oak and its bark thickness, and then what's the relationship between bark thickness and the degree of protection from overheating of the cambium. So this is Kylie Brand, who's doing her PhD work on this. We do things like using a contour gauge and then a bunch of modeling to get to the a cross-sectional view of the oak's bark. And here she's applying the contour gauge to the base of a coast live oak. And then once we can kind of establish that relationship between size and bark thickness, we can also start to look at the relationship between barkness and heat. And so here she's applying a heat gun to a blue oak, where we've got a thermocouple on the outside of the bark and another thermocouple against the cambium on the inside of the bark. And we can measure how long it takes for that particular tree with that bark thickness to get to lethal cambial temperatures, the time cambial kill, as it's called. So these are the kinds of things that let us get to a few conclusions. I'll just show you a couple data slides. And one of them is, what's the relationship between the readily measured tree diameter and its bark thickness? And this has been shown for a lot of other species as well. We're just getting this understanding for these three foothill oak species. In general, diameter is a pretty good predictor of bark thickness. So you don't have to directly measure the bark thickness, which is hard to do. You can measure the tree diameter and get a good estimation. The more subtle thing here is that these trees are all showing evidence of fire adaptation, which is the bark is proportionally thicker in the smaller individuals. And this is particularly true for coast live oak. You can see where it's actually got relatively thick bark, even at small diameters. That's sort of seen as a fire adaptation, and coast live oak is thought to be one of the more fire adapted oaks in North America. Then we can go to the question of how do you expect this relationship between tree size and time to cambium kill? What does that look like? And this is just a graph in semi-log plot space that Kylie produced that shows the diameter of the tree measured at 50 centimeters above the ground surface, from 0 to 200 centimeters. And then also then for a tree of any given size, how long would it take for typical fire temperatures to kill the cambium of that tree if you apply that heat? And so what you can see there is that most fires don't reside more than 10 minutes, but for a fire that resided for 10 minutes for for valley oak and blue oak, it might be a tree that's 50 centimeters in diameter or larger. For a coast live oak, it might be a tree that's only 20 to 25 centimeters in diameter. So this is the kind of understanding that we're trying to get so we can get better predictions of when you introduce fire into stands with oaks of different sizes, what kinds of outcomes you might get. Lots of ongoing work. We're planning another burn this November, another Santa Barbara Prescribed Fire Training Exchange, or TREX. A lot of partners, key partner being the Nature Conservancy, but many others that you see in logos down along the bottom there. It's sort of an endless full employment act for ecologists to try to do pre and post burn monitoring of these burns. There's lots to measure. We're continuing the oak bark research, and we're continuing to broaden the number of different kinds of disciplines and perspectives that we're bringing to the table. So I'm just gonna, yeah.
Sorry, but speaking of the measuring, we did get a question. I thought I'd throw that in there.
Can I just, I only got 2 more slides and then
Oh, sure, that's great.
Open it up. So I just wanted to show you the list of the kinds of cooperators and collaborators we have here. A lot of different organizations, lots of different perspectives. Also, we need funding to do this kind of work. And so thanking Linda Duttenhaber, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, CAL FIRE's Forest Health Research Program, which is funding Kylie's PhD, and NCOM, the National Center for Airborne Laser Mapping, which acquired LiDAR data for us. So there are sort of 3 takeaways. Adaptations promoting persistence or reestablishment, increased use to prescribe fire and knowledge needs. One of the things I would also add is that this bringing fire back into the foothill systems is something that is in some ways returning to cultural burning that's familiar to the tribes of California who burned in these systems for many, many centuries or millennia. So there's an important role for traditional ecological knowledge as we bring prescribed fire into these systems. And the work out at Sedgwick is engaging a nice diverse group of collaborating scientists and organizations, really all good. So I'll just finish there with this image of an oak woodland at Sedgwick during the spring season. And with that, thanks for the attention, everybody. I'm happy to open it up to discussion, Q&A.
Yeah, wow, what a wealth of knowledge. And we can share this slide deck if anybody is interested in that.
So I stop sharing my screen at this point, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. We did have one question from Susie Petrie, so I'll throw that out there. In fact, this caught my eye too. Very interested in the paint how do you say it? Pyrometers?
Pyrometers, yeah.
Pyrometers. So she's curious about what kind of paint or paper that is, because she wants to use it in her prescribed burns?
Right. So you're painting these paints, which are going to be familiar to people who are in the ceramics industry and so forth, because they're used to actually associate different glazes and melting points and so forth. But we're painting that paint onto copper strips. And we're using copper because it just sort of conducts the heat. It doesn't really insulate the paint at all. And also because it has a relatively high melting point. So that's copper strips. And then we just paint little, inch wide daubs of each of the paints with different melting points on those pyrometers.
That's so cool. A couple more questions. Debbie Dennison, I'm curious if and how you are using GIS in your research.
Yeah, lots of different ways. First, planning, because there's a tremendous amount of planning and permitting that goes into this work. So we're trying to use the GIS to both model topography, vegetation, fuel conditions, and then that feeds into fire behavior models and so forth. And so working with the County of Santa Barbara Fire Department and others, that GIS data produces maps and plans for where we're going to burn and how we're going to burn. But then we're also doing a lot of analysis where we're trying to extrapolate from individual measurements in the plots and so forth, using GIS and remote sensing to actually extrapolate across a broader landscape with those same kinds of relationships.
Yeah. One more question. Melinda Mohammed. Okay, there's a word in here you're going to have to help me understand. As part of the question, does your group investigate any potential effect of mycorrhizal?
Mycorrhizae. No, and I wish we had somebody doing that. I know we've had some people express an interest, but if you are interested in doing that sort of work, we would welcome the collaboration. So the mycorrhizae, my sense is in a really severe wildfire with really high temperatures, you might end up with a lot of damage. And these prescribed burns, they're relatively lower temperatures. It's not clear how far that heat's going to penetrate into the soil, but we're going to try to study that in more detail in future fires, looking at the heating profile. And that will be interestingly related to things like microbial dynamics in the soil, mycorrhizae, and so forth. But we're not doing any of that right now.
Great. Lots more questions. So Ian Axum, do you see a difference in the presence or abundance of invasive and annual species before and after burns?
Yeah, so the burns so far, that's always an issue when we think about it. I'll mention it, Ian, first in terms of even prepping for the fire. When you put in fuel perimeters and fire perimeters, we're doing that quite carefully to try to minimize the disturbance and introduction of invasives there. During the burn, what we found so far was if you started with annual grasses in the understory, you might get a few more native forbs and so forth post-burn, but generally you get the same invasives back that you started with in the understories. Out in the open coastal sage scrub and grasslands, the grass areas come back again, mainly introduced annual grasses, but the coastal scrub areas are much richer with native species, native grasses, and native wildflowers. So it's an interesting pattern. I would say, right, if we can get it right, perhaps we'll be able to see a promotion of biodiversity with a mosaic of different burns and burn ages and severities across this landscape, but we're going at it carefully.
Yeah, very interesting. We have a couple more questions and we do have a little more time, so I'll go forward. Kai Farmer, I'm assuming it would require too much labor to do regular prescribed burns across all the forested systems that require it. Is there a federal or state priority system that designates which would be burned first and when?
So that's probably a slightly different process in the federal system than in the private lands or non-federal lands. But California certainly has a policy now to try to rapidly and dramatically increase the amount of prescribed burning. There's sort of what I would call the bottlenecks or the friction in trying to do that. There are a number of them, and partly just the number of people that are qualified to conduct prescribed burns, willing landowners, permitting processes, air quality concerns. There's a lot of them. So right now, there's a lot that is not burning. That's the way I would put it. Prescribed burning is still a small fraction of the acreage burned in California. I don't know whether the priority system at this point is largely reflecting the sort of the ready and the willing to burn, but there are more and more funds available to do this kind of prescribed burning in foothill systems.
Mm-hmm.
Is it difficult to get certified to be able to run your own prescribed burn Or is that even?
It's a pretty rigorous process, and there's
Uh-huh.
both an online kind of training component, but there's a lot of field experience and training component as well. Some of that's the kind of training we can offer in these prescribed burns at Sedgwick through the TREX program.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on that. I'm not trained as a prescribed fire manager, firefighter, or a burn boss.
Right.
There's a lot of knowledge that you have to do this, and people are getting qualified and certified to do this kind of work now.
Is that training that's coming up open to people to sign up for, like if someone was interested in this webinar? Or?
We're happy to share an application with them. We'll have an application process. I wish we could handle more people, but at the moment we're probably looking at around 40 to 50 participants, just as that's our capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But there are other prescribed TREX training burns around California now as well. So keep an eye on what other folks are doing in different parts of the state.
Yeah. Was that the question lines up nicely with the one that was from an anonymous attendee? Were you going for that, Kristen, in your questioning? Because they were asking about what can private landowners do?
Oh yeah, and can they have their own prescribed burns, right?
Yeah. So I mean, depending on which county you're in, you're working with CAL FIRE or you're working with that county fire agency.
Right.
And the answer is yes, one can conduct prescribed burns on private lands without those agencies, but you have to have a certified burn boss to do that, somebody who's actually qualified and licensed and go through all of the permitting and meet the air quality kinds of constraints and so forth. But yes, I don't know that we will actually, I mean, it's going to require more and more private landowner kind of interest in cooperation, I think, if we really find that the prescribed burning is something we want to do more of in these systems.
Yeah.
Well, let's take it up to the Northern Pacific coast with Dan Pono. The indigenous people burned the inside of very large trees to serve as a light beacon for travelers along the coast. It amazes me how these trees were used over and over without burning down. Off the cuff, is there some sort of residue that develops that would allow multiple burns, or are they just savvy at putting out the tree fire?
I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it's the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So
Yeah, that's cool.
I love the light beacon. All right. And then have you thought, this is from Cedric Center. Have you thought of looking at the Blue Oak Savanna on Camp Roberta's, or maybe Camp Roberts, not
Tim
sure,
Roberts, yeah.
that has been burned for many years? Seems like a great case study.
It's a great idea. We haven't really done that. I know there's familiar with some of the studies that have been done up in those Blue Oak woodlands, and it'll be fun to compare our results at Sedgwick with the runs up at Camp Roberts.
Yeah.
But it's a good reminder that we should get up there and get a little bit better familiarity with what they've done up there.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
one. Susie Petrie, I'll blaze through these, Rini. Susie Petrie, reach out to your local prescribed burn association for training and permitting guidance. So that's just not for you, Frank, obviously.
Right. Yep.
Our audience. And then thank you for that, Susie. And then Melina Watts, does USDA-NRCS fund prescribed burns yet? If not, perhaps you should present at the California Association of Resource Conservation Districts Conference and make the suggestion.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, these are great. All right, we are at the end of our half hour, but we do want to, this is my favorite section, is Kristen's crazy ideas. In this case, we're going to go to Frank for what Frank thinks is possibly a normal idea, and other people might think it's a crazy idea, but you got something for us, Frank? He's thinking hard.
Yeah.
This can be like a dream, what you would like wish for the world in the realm of trees and
Here's my
management.
long shot hope. How's that?
Okay, I like it.
In other places that I've worked at field stations in other parts of the US, there are long-term studies where people are doing experimental burns for decades. And the amount that you can learn if you commit to these long-term research programs is really stunning. But my hope is that we can start something here that actually allows us to look across multiple burns, multiple decades, to really start to understand the role of fire in these systems. But that's a long shot.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I guess it used to be not too long ago, a crazy idea to do a prescribed burn. Is that right? Like how long ago was that?
It might still be a crazy idea, Chris.
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
I think what I'm in some people's minds, but I like the term good fire, which
Yeah.
is often used and associated with cultural burning by the tribes. And I think the more people see what these really disciplined prescribed burns look like, they'll start to get more comfortable with them and the safety associated with them and the
Yeah.
fact that they're doing good, not harm.
That makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Well, so we wrapped up our poll, and I'm definitely surprised to see, or happily surprised to see 75% are currently working on a project that pertains to forest management or wildfires. So yay. Thank you, Frank, for coming and bringing some value to that. And then what brings you to the webinar today? The biggest answer there, I believe, was working on pre-fire suppression vegetation management. So that's wonderful. Oh, and other, but we didn't get any in the chat. So that'll be that. Yeah. So, and also just a quick note, the reason we know Frank is he does use WildNote out there. I'm thinking for the probably the pre-surveys potentially.
Pre and post.
Pre and
actually.
post surveys.
And
And
a
so,
lot of other applications too in vegetation monitoring, oak
yeah.
monitoring, and so forth. It's been a really helpful app. So thank you for that.
Yeah, awesome. Great. And we just want to thank you, Frank, for joining us today. And there's his UCSB email address if you want to contact him. And then we've got Rini here, and you can contact her for all things WildNote. We've been talking about new features that we're building on the platform that we like to give a little update on. We are really working hard on some wonderful report builder features. Basically, will allow you to tell a story with your photos and your data coming from multiple surveys and different forms to bring it all together into what we call a narrative. Could be any kind of report, a yearly report, a monthly, 10 years even, to help you build that stuff out and pull all the data from WildNote. So stay tuned for that. We'll be demoing that soon. And I think that's it, Rini. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I do have a quick demo if anybody wants to stay on. We have a cool feature that we fleshed out a little further, our photo point. So I thought this would relate nicely to the pre and post fire burns.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what I want to show. So I can bring that onto my screen here. So if you guys, anybody wants to stay, it's like a 5-minute demo. And I have, I have a couple of things I'm juggling. Okay, so what I've done is I have a few examples of our photo export, and then I'll show you how we collected that data in WildNote. So I think photos are often an overlooked expensive time, and in WildNote, you can really save a lot of time with these photo exports. This one, 2UP, you can now specify additional information that you want alongside of the photo. Really powerful and flexible. And we've also increased the real estate that photo takes up, because we have heard from our customers, they really like to have the biggest photo possible along with the data. And then there's other configurable things such as your logo and header lines, page numbers, that kind of stuff. So that's one example. Sometimes you just want to get a lot of photos on one page, particularly if you have a beautiful dog like I do.
The star of the show there.
The star of the show, that's my Weimaraner. So this is the 4UP example. And then the one that I'm going to go into a little more detail, and I didn't have a fire to take pictures of, so I took some pictures of pre and post pepper plants. But I think you get the idea. So what we're showing is the ability to, from the same point, take a photo before an event and after event. We also have the ability to take photos from the same spot and bring them together over a period of time. But I'm just going to show you the before and after. So what that looks like to gather that information, I'm going to pull over a mirror of my mobile device here. And this is what we call the photo point log. So I'm going to click into this first survey so you can see what the data collection looks like. So this is configurable. I also wanted to point out you can include your own questions. That could be whatever you want it to be with any type of answer. You can set your locations up ahead of time or select them while you're there. And then this is the key piece right here, the type of photo log. So when you first go out, you would say, okay, I'm going to do my pre-construction photo documentation. And then when I scroll down, I could select the direction I'm facing if I want to, and then drop a point for the coordinates. And here you see that first picture that I took. And then I would save and exit. Then later on, oops, I didn't mean to click there. Fast forward, the event has occurred and I want to go back to the same place. So now I'm going to click post construction or post event. And you'll see there's another option there for my second photo. So that's pretty cool. It's very fast. We can, we can take any questions on that, or Kristen, if you have anything else you want to offer. That's really all I wanted to show, is just the power of the photos, and then encourage you, if you're interested at all, give me reach out. Love to help you guys out.
Awesome, Rainey. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Frank, for joining us today and teaching us about fire suppression. I look forward to all the things you're going to learn over the next years, and maybe we'll have you back and learn some more. Once
We'll do a pre and post with Frank.
Yeah, we'll do a pre and post, Frank Davis. Bye, everyone.
Looking
All
forward to
right.
it.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Bye-bye.